Welcome back guys to another Odyssey video. I've actually found a couple of builds I have not yet released. And today I will start with an incredible spare build that will deal the most damage for every spare build I have ever made. This build will have over 700% critical damage at 95 or even 100% critical chance. We will have over 290,000 damage in our inventory. Of course we will use the RS Madness ability and the 2 kills reset together with ISO enhance, which will make you completely invincible. You could also just call it a true ISO god build, because it is no less than that. And since spares and staffs are very similar, I will also include a complete staff build version for the same build that also has the same 700% critical damage, 100% crit chance and 290,000 damage. And I found actually that the staff has even the better moveset. But let's first check out the damage values. With the spare build we will get 2.4 million damage with a light attack, we get 3.8 million damage with a heavy attack. Of course, these attacks are perfectly made from behind, so don't forget that. The charged heavy attack will be up to 7.4 million damage, which would be enough to kill a mercenary or nightmare even twice. And Ring of Chaos will be up to 5.8 million damage. With spares I really like to use the Bull Rush ability, and in this build it will deal up to 9 million damage. Last but not least, Furious the Bloodline will deal up to 20 million damage in an animation cancel. Of course there is no build without crazy hunter damage. We get 12 million damage with the Devastating Shot and 15 million damage with the Predator Shot. RS Madness activation will be sky high with over 13 million damage on the initial activation blast, and you will also deal between 2 and 4 million damage for the regular RS Madness attacks. This is because we have over 750,000 assassin damage without even using a single assassination perk. That is more than enough to overrun mercenaries on nightmare with a normal assassination, and of course rush assassination is no problem at all. But what makes this build so good is actually that thanks to the RS Madness ability and ISO enhance, we can use the RS Madness ability as often as we want to, and during that we will be completely invincible. That makes playing with this build in the arena, even with reduced health and with the Corfu engraving that has minus 100% resistance, as easy as eating a piece of cake. And if you don't like to play with spares, check out the staff version of this build, because staffs are incredibly underrated in this game. Staffs have an incredible moveset. They are just as fast as daggers, but they deal way more damage than daggers. It's really no underestimation when I tell you staffs are daggers with range on steroids. If you are new to Assassin's Creed Odyssey and you don't understand all the tricks shown in this video, feel free to join our Discord server and ask our veteran players for help. You could also become a Patreon or YouTube member to support this channel. That is greatly appreciated as well. In the inventory we have 291,000 warrior damage and 770,000 assassin damage. That is more than enough to one-shot everything. Of course a big chunk of that is coming from the Bighorn bow, which amplifies your warrior damage by a factor of 1.6 and adds all its 6495 DPS to your left melee weapon. And this amount of warrior damage will also be used when you shoot your arrows. So you don't use your normal hunter damage, instead you will use the 291,000 warrior damage when you shoot your arrows. For our left melee weapon we will use the ISO forged hunter spear. We will use the hunter spear and not the warrior spear, because we want to use the hunter damage conversion anyway in our build. So this weapon comes with the hunter damage conversion already on our item, and since it has a higher amount of DPS, it is actually better to use the legendary weapon than compared to having a perfect warrior spear. We will get 3000 more warrior damage when we use the ISO forged hunter spear, because due to the hunter damage conversion we will also get half of the hunter damage to be warrior damage anyway, and the higher DPS makes up more than enough to close this gap and gives us even more damage. The reason why we use the hunter damage conversion lies in the Corfu engraving, because the Corfu engraving gives us 200% damage for every damage type. With the hunter damage conversion we will convert 100% of the unused hunter damage to be warrior and assassin damage. So in fact the Corfu engraving gives us 300% warrior and assassin damage when we use it together with the hunter damage conversion. The best option left to engrave an engraving on the ISO forged hunter spear is then using 50% critical damage, but of course you could also use another legendary engraving of your choice, for example the permanent fire damage. Our other weapon will be a perfect warrior spear with warrior damage, damage spares and critical damage, and we engrave armor penetration. And the Bighorn bow will have the 100% damage but health capped to 25% because we already have the damage conversion on the spear. If you want to get the Bighorn bow, you should use your 200 free helix credits to get the Bighorn bow for free from the store. Without using the Bighorn bow, you will only have 170,000 damage and not 290,000 damage, so that makes a very big difference. It is the most important item in the game. On our helmet we will use warrior damage, 20% crit chance while full health and 50% critical damage, and here we will engrave the Become ISO Enhanced, which completely protects you whenever you get hit, and you can reset that with the Ares Madness cooldown perk on your bracers, because whenever you activate Ares Madness you will also reset your ISO Enhanced. So that means you don't have to wait for 2 minutes to activate Ares Madness, and you also don't have to wait for 2 minutes to be able to use ISO Enhanced again. The cooldown engraving also still uses the minus 50% from the Northern Traveler set and not the minus 15, so in fact you only have to make 2 kills to be able to use Ares Madness again, which will then also reset your ISO Enhance. On the belt we will use warrior damage, 10% crit chance, 100% critical damage while full health, and if you have that engraving you should engrave the 5% crit chance and 25% crit damage from the Nemean Lion set engraving. If not, then another possibility to get to 100% crit chance would be using the belt of the Sphinx with the unique 20% crit chance, or if you also don't have the belt of the Sphinx, simply engrave 10% crit chance on your bow and move the Farx engraving on your right melee weapon. On the torso we have warrior damage, 10% all damage, 50% critical damage, and here's the best spot to use the Corfu engraving with the plus 100% damage but minus 100% resistances. And on the boots we will have warrior damage, 100% critical damage, 30% damage spares and 20% crit chance. That will give us a total stats of 668% warrior damage. We have 120% damage spares, we only lacking the 20% which we would engrave on the boots, but the 100% crit damage are better there. We have 95% crit chance, you could make that 100% if you want to, and 700% critical damage. The staff build version from that build will be very similar. We will have 288,000 warrior damage and 755,000 assassin damage, so a little less damage here for the staff spot. That is because we don't have the ISO spare. Instead we use a perfect epic staff with warrior damage, 50% critical damage and 30% damage of staffs, and we have to manually engrave the hunter damage conversion here on our first staff. The other weapon will also be a perfect warrior staff, and we engrave armor penetration on that, and the Bighorn bow is unchanged with the 100% damage from the Farx engraving. The armor items are also very similar. We have the same headgear with ISO Enhanced, the same bracers with the Northern Traveler's perks, the same belt, and the same breastplate with the 100% damage but minus 100% resistances. And only on the boots that is different because we use 30% damage of staffs instead of the damage of spares. That will give us a total stats of 679.5% warrior damage, and as you can see, the higher warrior damage does not necessarily give you the higher damage, because in the spare build, thanks to the DPS, we got more damage with lesser amount of warrior damage percent. So DPS plays a bit of a role, and especially the weapon damage and crit damage plays an even bigger role. We will have 120% damage of staffs, 95% crit chance, you can make that again 100% if you want to, and we have the same 700% critical damage. For the basic version of this build you will need around 200 ability points, which you will get when you simply play the game and finish the Atlantis DLC. You should always go for 6th Sense because that not only doubles your hunter damage, but it also helps to freeze your enemies when you are spotted, so you can still do assassinations or attack them with your warrior attacks. You should invest 2 points to unlock the fire or poison arrows, and then it's up to you whether you want to play with multi-shot, devastating shot or predator shot. Predator shot will deal the most damage and devastating shot is the easiest shot to use. Archery Master will refill your first adrenaline segment and gives you additional hunter damage and headshot damage. Then only put 1 point here into the overpower bow strike, because overpower bow strike does not work with the Bighorn bow, but the ghost arrows do, and they are pretty much awesome when you use them. If you want a replacement for the overpower bow strikes, then you can use your explosive arrows together with the ghost arrows. That will give you the same effect and it costs only 1 adrenaline. In the warrior tree you should definitely go for the charged heavy attack, because spares have one of the best charged heavy attacks in the game. It is almost as good as the ones with swords or with heavy blunts. Then of course go for the usual passive abilities, Weapons Master, Gear Master. You can invest 3 points into flaming attacks, but if you engrave the permanent flaming attacks on your sword, you only have to go for 1 point. However, it is mandatory to go for Fire Mastery because that gives you another 40% fire damage for free. Don't forget to get the overpower attacks, the strongest ability in the game. Normally the overpower attacks will guarantee you a single hit to kill every mythical creature, but that's not the case for spares and staffs. However, they are still pretty strong and you should definitely use them. Then go for Ares Madness, that is the craziest and best ability in the game. With the engraving on your arms, you can use this ability as often as you want to without having the 2 minutes cooldown, which is really overpowered. Fury of the Bloodline should be your new best friend if you play with spares and staffs, because Fury is always able to do an animation cancel on mythical creatures, and that is the ability that still can one-shot mythical creatures even if the overpower attack sucks with spares and staffs. Fury will do the job for you. Ring of Chaos is mandatory as well as Second Wind. Of course you could also use your torch to heal yourself instead of using Second Wind, then you will save 1 slot on your abilities wheel. I would actually encourage you to use the Bull Rush if you play with spares, because that is a really strong ability and the second best ability after Fury of the Bloodline when you play with spares and staffs. In the Assassin tree, definitely go for Shadow Assassin for the increased assassin damage and critical damage. Rush Assassin also helps you out really much. You don't need to get critical assassination because you have enough assassin damage anyway, but definitely go for Stealth Master because that increases all your attacks by 10% overnight, which is a real additional multiplier, and it also dampens all the noise you make. For the basic mastery points, you should put 8 points into hunter damage, and then it depends on which weapon you play with. Either put 15 points on damage with spares or 15 points on damage with staffs. Definitely not pick the other one if you don't use it. Then 12 points on crit chance and 12 points on crit damage should do the job here in the hunter tree. In the warrior tree you should put around 12 points into warrior damage, and then further down around 8 points into armor penetration. All the other points are spent in assassin damage, 20 points on critical chance at full health, 12 points on critical damage while full health, and then another 12 points on damage while full health. All that will cost you around 180 to 200 points. Then you can further improve and max out all these abilities, and when you have way more points it should look like that you max out the hunter damage, then damage with staffs and spears, crit chance, crit damage, headshot damage, damage with bow charge shot, bow charging speed, and even the damage on distant targets. You can go for a couple of points on the adrenaline and the chance not to consume special arrows, max out warrior damage, fire damage, armor penetration. Of course you can invest a couple of points in damage dealt restored as health, max out damage whenever time is slowed down, assassin damage, the crit chance, crit damage stuff, put a couple of points into adrenaline, health gain per adrenaline spent, and damage on elites and bosses. I hope you really like the new best spare build 2022. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.